What's going on, folks? Today we're going to be looking at the Demon of Hatred in Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. This boss fight's actually pretty challenging. It's not like any of the other fights in Sekiro. It's a lot more like a Dark Souls or Bloodborne boss fight. It's probably the second largest boss in the entire game, and it's one of the only, I think, 3 bosses throughout the entire game that actually have 3 health bars, so it can be a very long fight, and it's pretty challenging. In this video, I'll talk to you about the different tools that I use, the strategy that I try to pick up, and we'll see if we can help you get this boss down. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's talk about equipment real quick. I would really recommend that you get the final tier whistle. It will allow you to stun the boss 3 times throughout the boss fight. And I would also recommend the Fire Umbrella Shield. The Fire Umbrella Shield is very important because there's a couple mechanics in the second and third phase that can easily one-shot you, and the Umbrella just deflects them. It makes the attacks just completely null and void. So very, very much recommend that you use that. As far as like items, I recommend using the damage candy. I forget what it's called, but the one that buffs your damage, and also make sure that you have, your 3 pellets, and also the fire resistant item that allows you to drop your fire. Throughout phase 1, there's only really 3 major attacks that you really have to worry about. This charge here that you see, the only way that you can really ever evade that is simply by jumping right when he pulls his right arm back. I think it's his left arm back. The fireballs, which you saw there, and then the last one is going to be his jump, where he jumps into the air, and then once he comes back down, basically just kind of run away, and then you can grapple to his head and get in a couple more attacks. Those are the really big mechanics of the entire fight. As the fight goes on, they get enhanced with extra abilities, different effects on those abilities, and each time you transition and before you start the fight, try to remember to use your candy to get your damage buff, and then your dousing medicine, that way you take less fire damage. If you get too far away from the boss, he'll do this effect where he will throw fireballs at far range and then close range immediately after. So if you can't get far enough away or get to the boss in time, don't continue to run in, run back, and you'll miss the second wave of fireballs. They do have high stun, so you can easily get locked in place and just absolutely decimated. The other option for when he jumps away, which you just saw, he'll do a fire slam, where basically he'll extend his arm to extremely far range and then slam down to the ground. Best to avoid this, just hold your sprint button and sprint to the left or to the right, whichever you prefer. I found throughout this boss fight it's easiest to sprint to his right because most of his attacks will go over your head. With the left, I found that I was getting caught more and more often. Here you'll see the long arm slam, sprint to the right, and you can get in a couple more attacks. Now, as you can see throughout this entire fight, I haven't had to use a single healing gourd. That's honestly just because this was a really, really, really good run. Right there, I just staggered him because I've been putting in so much damage, so I got in a couple extra more free hits. There again, I'm just sprinting around to his right side. I know this looks kind of ridiculously easy, but I assure you, I probably spent an hour trying to do this boss. So we just beat phase 2, we're going to transition into phase 3, and this is where things get a little harder. Right when he starts to transition, I immediately pop my damage candy and then my flame dousing medicine. That way I take less damage from fire if I get caught. When he starts phase 3, he will immediately do his AoE circle there, which will put up a huge ring of fire. You want to try to run away from that, because if you get locked in there, you have a very, very, very small moving space. At this point, I'm now using the whistle, which will allow me to get 3 stuns. I highly recommend trying to get about 5 or 6 attacks in. If you can, he'll usually stagger, and then you whistle again. Make sure that you get the damage in on the stagger and on the stun before you whistle again, because otherwise you'll waste one of your whistle blows, kind of like how I just did. This next move is the last enhanced move that you'll really see throughout the entire fight. Basically, when he hops away, he'll either do fireballs or he'll do what was that flame wave. If he does the flame wave, switch to the umbrella and just deflect it. It's the easiest and safest way. You could strafe, but sometimes you'll get caught, and then you're dead because the damage output that he does throughout this fight is so high. Lastly, obviously make sure you hit the second execution after you get the first one, otherwise you'll have to do the entire phase 3 over again. His health bar will reset. And that's the fight. Again, thanks guys for watching the videos. I'm having a blast coming back to editing content, and I hope this guide helps you get through one of the more difficult bosses as I found it to be. Thanks again, folks, and have a good night.